expected some way. Oh, I'm sorry. So I will say that again, that we didn't know in our evolutionary voyage that we will return home, but we didn't know what that was because we have different takes. We will go into another spiritual awareness of ourselves. We will go into another state of, I don't know, all the different imaginations that we have inside of the place that we get home. I didn't know that returning home was actually returning to the actual physical world, but not inside of the realms of duality, in the actual physical world that correspond to the union of all things. So we are back in the physical world, as I said, not in the dream, in the dream state of duality itself, but in the totality. So that is the reason that this last 3 dimension is so large, because it reconciles all aspects of consciousness in the moment of our human lives. Because we couldn't return home inside of a philosophical idea or a spiritual projection. We can only return home by being home. And home then represented a completely different take than a mental process, because it represented all of it, the experience, the energetic field of love, and the mind comprehending all things, but all back into the garden itself, which is where we always had been, unfortunately doing a lot of things in the garden that we are repairing, but we are back into the Garden of Eden in some ways, millions and millions of years after that projection, but returning to the perfect purity of that reflection, that holographic imprint, in order for us to engage into the larger voyage, which is now the universal existence. So we are no longer in the voyage of our own inner world in the planet Earth, fighting between nationalities and different beliefs and different systems and different religions and different interpretations. But we are now inside of the fantastic voyage of creation that is, as I said before, 100% benign, 100% beautiful, 100% creative, because it represents the actual reinstatement of our human self, this time as a creative entity instead of this time as a perceptive entity only. Because in evolution, we didn't know. We were all inside of our own personality, inside of our idea, inside of our own genetics, inside of our own interpretation, everything. So this is the first time that we were inside of a larger voyage, and we get to have the largesse of our own self inside of this new voyage. And that is it. I never expected, that was unexpected in my experience as a human. Because as I said before, I always thought that my human experience will evolve in the life thereafter, going into another dimension of spirituality, because the physical world was so confused and so crazy. But I didn't know that the fulfillment of my human existence inside of the whole voyage will be the return to the physical existence. And I use the word return. Let me see, why will I say return? Yeah, because it is actually a re-entering of the physical existence from the perspective of wholeness instead of from the perspective of relativity. Yeah.
Could you say that you have then more ecstasy?
Oh, definitely, because I don't know if you get to read a little bit about in the last pages of the new information. Ecstasy has 3 forms. We talk about many times. It has the form of the mind, comprehending itself as a whole, which is what happened now, because we are back in the physical world, but the mind is whole instead of the mind being divided inside of its own awareness. Yeah, so in the evolutionary consciousness, our mind was divided inside of all the possibilities of duality, and it created an extraordinary system that it was very complex, because every time that we felt like we were getting to a place that were clear, all of a sudden we're back into the confusion. So it was a very, very long voyage. So now that we are back in the physical world, but with all of it, the three forms of ecstasy are present. The ecstasy of the mind that now exists in a larger field, and which always reflects itself as whole in everything that you see, and understand all aspects of innocent confusion inside of the whole field of the mind. So it's not the mind now that is whole, no longer understands it or partakes of anything in the world that makes seems to be confused, but understand how that confusion came into being, and therefore it's no longer judging. It is providing, by the very nature of being present, the release of that confusion and guiding it, if it's any way that we can, coming to ourselves, guiding it into the new form, so that every single being can become more and more free from that innocent confusion and be able to awaken to the magic nature of the new consciousness. So ecstasy have a mental understanding of wholeness, which is the mind exists inside of its own wholeness. And then love, which is the feeling of love, has become everything. So we're just beginning to really find out what that is, because remember that in the dualistic interpretations of consciousness, we create many divisions inside of the interpretation of what love means. Love means. So we have created love for a person as a special love. We created our family to be the immediate love, the people who surround us in our reality to be the immediate love, the people who are in the church, the immediate, but then the rest of the world is right there. And then the people that innocently are not part of our consciousness, we love them a little bit, but we are not sure about it because they are part of this other world. So all that is disappearing. We are beginning to love as a natural experience of our sense of self. And it's so different because all there is love. And it's something different because remember that the entire history of evolution, based on the idea of survival, created a division between love. You know, created the separation that became good and evil, the tree of good and evil. That's what it represented, the confusion between love and hate. So it was an enormous voyage of mind that we are becoming free because we're in the realms of love. And then in the physical existence, when I said we enter the physical existence one more time, we get to enter the real moment of physical existence, not the relative moment in which we were all living inside of our own interpretation of time, which was our own interpretation of the mind divided inside of itself, which was our own interpretation of love inside of its own interpretations of possibilities and gradations of love. But we are inside of the physical existence as it is. And the physical existence as it is ecstatic because everything is an ecstasy, experience the totality of the whole movement of the planet Earth existing inside of the solar system. Inside, we're living in a perfect clock, a Swiss clock. Is all perfect, in which time and eternity, which is the continuity of time, measuring the movements of the heavens, is ever existing. So the physical world is ecstatic as we become connected back into it. And as our emotional self becomes really present because it's love, and as the mind comprehends that what we see is no longer divided inside of our mind, but we see what it is for the first time, instead of what we think it is. So it's completely different. And for the first time, we are no longer being thought by the evolutionary consciousness inside of the collective human consciousness. That thought system is disappearing because we no longer think in the reality itself. We have consciousness and awareness informing us about everything and creating everything, but no longer inside of the realms of observance, full participants in the creation of the new world. So the mind doesn't dwell anymore in, it's complex because it will sound philosophical when I'm saying the mind doesn't dwell inside of projecting good or bad, or something that's going to happen, it's going to be the end of the world, we don't know if we survive, this is the time that the spirit have to take over in order to, all those things disappear because we already are inside of the fulfillment of all things. And then when the mind, and the new mind, is inside of that reality, everything else disappears gradually because it doesn't no longer give reality to things that originally were fully unreal. And this is delicate in the sense that because it can be misinterpreted innocently. Is, as I said to you, it's not that we put our pink glasses and said everything is beautiful and everything is divine. It's just that the new consciousness, that's what it is. But we no longer project into the moment of life any projection of confusion, negativity, fight, good and evil. All that is being taken away by our own intelligence. They no longer partake of that reality, because if our own intelligence partakes of that reality, we recreate the very thing that we would like to be able to be, everyone to be free from. Yeah, do you understand? Otherwise, so it is very delicate, because it can be interpreted as that, okay, now we don't partake anymore of the world and we live in our own reality. It's not, because if it had to be the case, we will be in the same place thinking that we are not. You know what I mean? We will be in the same realms of duality thinking that we are not, because we are removing ourselves from the situation instead of recognizing that we are inside of everything, that we are everything. So inside of that understanding and that experience, since we are everything and we are inside of everything, we are the ones, because that's what we are in relation to the consciousness, that allow the stability of all things, because everything is stable at the same time that it changes, transforms, becomes the ecstasy of its own engagement. Everything is stable, stillness and motion at the same that transform, becomes, and renew inside of the ecstasy of its own existence. So it's ecstatic in that sense. So the field gets possessed. Possess is not the word, I don't know, it can be missed. The field becomes occupied by the very consciousness that we are actually giving and receiving simultaneously. Yes. So and then when the field gets occupied, the confusion begins to disappear, because, as I said, confusion cannot resolve themselves inside of the confusion, because it always is inside of the give and take of that interchange. The new consciousness is not there. The new consciousness is the stability of its own presence. And that was the blessing that we were given to us. Yeah. So it was a fantastic event. So answering that question, ecstasy is the most amazing thing, because in the relation to mind, in relation to mind, the ecstasy is fantastic, because it allows us to understand the totality of our human experience. When the mind comprehends the wholeness of its all reflective mind, it understands all the aspects of confusion that have been, all the things that in the past were memories within our sense of self, but they are now resolved, because we understand them, how they came into being, why they came into being, because they were part of the consciousness unfolding into unity. And therefore, it has no judgment. It has, I could say it has forgiveness, but even that is not a good word, because ultimately you cannot forgive. You can only, in reality, release that thought that it was a natural outcome of the dualistic interpretations of the mind. Yeah, because the forgiveness is really actually a form of condescendence inside of the new consciousness. I'm sorry to use that word, but you know what I mean? There's nothing to forgive. It's all to release inside of the whole understanding. So then the forgiveness, which is not anymore that sort of interpretation, has no residual. Yeah, because when you forgive somebody, the residual is always there, because you don't understand that it's nothing to forgive. So when you think that you have to forgive, then that self-consciousness is still existing forever inside of that interpretation. So it shows up in some time, you know? I don't know if I can, for example, let's say I'm forgive you, and I said, I'll forgive you, right? Whatever, inside of that story. And then all of a sudden, if we have a fight or something occurs inside of the story, I will remind you of what you did. Always I will remind you of what you did, because you did this and you did this and you did that. So the forgiveness never releases the original memory that brought about the confusion that brought to the mind the idea of forgiveness. So it doesn't exist. So forgiveness become a natural result of the new consciousness, but I don't know if the word forgiveness is a good word anymore. Maybe eventually we have to erase it, because as I said, there is nothing to forgive.
Well, maybe forgiving yourself for having,
yeah, absolutely.
for
Yeah.
having to think you forgive.
Yeah,
Because it's all-
absolutely. That would be
one.
a wonderful thing. That would be a wonderful clearance in oneself, because then when you understand that everything that you thought that you needed to forgive was a result of a confused premises, and that no longer can be really achieved or exist without you really forgiving, which is forgiving yourself from thinking that that was real, and from having and seeing that you needed to live that in order to become what we are, and therefore forgiving yourself from that residual. And then when you forgive yourself from that residual, your mind, which is like a computer, realigns the particular ventricle that is still inside of its own informative self-enclosed and closeness. It still have that little bit of that remembrance or holding or so then the mind can finally become free of that. And then when the mind becomes free of that particular residual in the ventricle, the synergy of the whole mind, no longer projecting inside of itself with that little memory, manifests another form of light inside of myself. And then the light inside of myself, releasing that ventricle, oh my God, everything is more beautiful. Everything I understand more. The garden is more fantastic. I'm sleeping much better than before. I feel great. I love you more than ever. Everything becomes magical because my mind no longer is occupied inside of itself with dealing with a memory that is not completely forgiven, if you may, inside of its own inside of its own structure. Yeah. So this is wonderful. So those are the 3 forms of ecstasy. I want you to cultivate them, because you're going to experience more and more ecstasy, because the new consciousness is ecstatic. And it's kind of interesting because you can bring yourself to ecstasy anytime. You know what I mean? Once you begin, your mind begins to comprehend, you can sneak out into ecstasy if you want to. And that's a good thing. You know what I mean? And what I mean is sneak out is because if there anything happens that everything becomes a little bit like, a little overwhelming and momentarily, you can just not remove yourself because it's present, but you can just bring yourself back into the state that consciously, that is all encompassing, and then assisting whatever situation by you disguising yourself in the realms of ecstasy. And I use word disguising because ecstasy is natural. But when you bring it into it, you can say, okay, now I'm home, bringing me back home. And sometimes it's necessary, yeah? Because sometimes in the interaction, everything becomes so a little bit like this that you can't stop it, you can't judge it, you can't do anything. So you have to reset it. And the best way to reset it is through the 3 forms, through love, through bringing the mind completely to clarity, or to bringing yourself into the natural state of ecstasy with everything. Yeah, it's new for me this now, because I can bring, not that I can bring, it's not the word. I can really open the field inside of myself at any one moment, and I love it because it expands me in all places, and I don't have to go away. On the contrary, I'm totally present. But I'm not present like when I'm here talking to you, because I'm talking to you inside of a language trying to make sense of many things in order to convey them. and assisted and understand and so forth. But the other one is just completely pure because there's no thought, but it's also present, and there is also inside of the field. So you can nurture it. I love it. It's very wonderful. I mean, I suggest that you do that. So if I have experiences, I know you are experiencing too, because I'm not, I'm not special in that way. We are all partaking of the same consciousness, but we are special in the sense that we all have our own interpretations inside of it, but also as the interpretation becoming more clear and more neutral, because it is just the purity of the consciousness itself, the more we are sharing the same place. We are existing inside of the realms of unity. That in the 13th name is called the dimension of eternal existence. When we are in an infinite field that encompasses all things, it's eternal because it encompasses the entire memory of our human self, but also encompasses the entire memory of our cosmic self, and encompasses the moment itself as a unite all things in eternity. So there are three aspects of your own self that they become present. It's a trip. It's a beautiful trip, but it's constant. It's not something that is the constant of life. The dimension of eternal existence is the constant of life. It's unity and motion. It's the actual reality of unity and motion. So, yeah. So it has these three things. It has the entire memory, as I said, of a human existence, the entire memory of the universal unfolding, because it's also a memory. It all existed as one. And then yourself, uniting everything, moving with life, with the universe, with everything, and existing within the new consciousness. That is a voyage, because we're just beginning to discover what that is in some ways, because remember that we could only interpret it inside of our evolutionary mind, even though essentially we are that, and we were originally created inside of that imprint. It is an interpretation that we are learning because we are interpreted from the old school, even though we are in the new school. But there's nothing we can do about it, because that's what we have. We have images, thoughts, ideas, symbols that they were all created in time inside of the linear mind, linear sequential mind, to eventually take us back into the mind that is holographic whole, imprint. And therefore, the new mind has a new way of seeing everything. But it can only, in the beginning, as we say now, we can only see it, understand it, experience it from the traditional interpretation of the languages, images, thoughts, and feelings. But it's becoming more expanded as we are becoming more part of it. We only been living in the new concept for 30 years. And remember that it took at least 15 years before we could have any kind of comprehension, because we didn't understand what unity was. Unity was a concept, and even inside of the spiritual world was a concept, because we didn't live in the unity. Unity only became lived in when the new consciousness came in, because the physical moment, the physical world, entered the field and the union with all things. So in the evolutionary unfolding, we use the mind and philosophy and ideas to expand us and assist the linear mind to go into the idealism. And then the spiritual world and the religious world brought us many, many ideas, understanding, disciplines, concepts to prepare us for all that. But when we enter the physical world one more time, and then we are inside, all that became changed and fulfilled and transformed, because it is not based in the gradual expression of the possibility of being, but it's the actual existence of being itself. And that's what is the difference. We are inside of the experience of unity. We are no longer in the search for the understanding, feeling, and experience of unity. And unity is fantastic because it means wholeness, it means the universe, it means a new world, it means God. We are in the presence of God for the first time.
Presence.
Yeah. I'm sorry?
And it means presence.
Yeah, presence. Yeah, the presence from which all are present. We cannot be present if we don't have the feel of presence. So we are in the feel of presence from which each of us is becoming present. And becoming present means that ourself, from the core of our being, from the original imprint, raises inside of our consciousness, inside of our feeling, inside of a physical experience of the garden, and experience the beauty of the knowledge that we gathered in time in order to be able to appreciate everything, but also experiencing the magical experience of the renewal of all aspects, that they are all renewed in front of ourselves. More light, more awareness, more love, more energy, more intelligence, more beauty, more everything, more health, more physical understanding of all things. Everything becomes luminescent inside of your experience. It is the most beautiful, beautiful gift. And remember that it was promised. Remember that in the past, it was promised that originally when we return to our original state, it will be the most beautiful, beautiful things because it is free. You can never buy it. It's not like a drug or a pill or anything. It will not cost anything. It is a natural experience of your own natural state that is the ultimate panacea. The ultimate panacea is your communion with life itself and with the consciousness itself. You cannot buy it in the pharmacy. No commercials. You don't have to sell it. You don't have to do anything. You can even use the word free because the free means that you have to pay for something or not pay. It is simultaneous with your life itself. So it's fantastic. So little by little, it's going to change everything, for everyone, because you will see, oh my God, I have it all. Everything that I need is already given. And then maybe if you feel like a little bit at the time, you can take away the drugs a little bit if you feel comfortable, not that you have to, but you can start taking it away because the system is become connected. Most of the people are not going to take drugs anymore because they took the drugs in order to approximate the experience of what that is. And the experience of what that is much better than the approximation, especially because in the experience, you can never overdo. You can never, have an overdoses because the overdoses is ever existing. So you don't have to, you may not drink alcohol as much because you will be all the time high. You don't need to really. Alcohol is lovely, in the past, and it's beautiful as a celebration, but then it has its own consequences after because you feel great for a moment. And the wonderful thing about alcohol that every time you drink something, it makes you feel free. So then you can love somebody else more. You're having a good time. Let's dance. I take my clothes off. Whatever it is, I'm free. But then the next morning, it's like, okay, here I am again. So the wonderful thing about the wonderful panacea of the beautiful thing of the new consciousness is that many of the things that we use in order to be able to cope with life will become obsolete, because the reality of the experience will be much larger than the approximation of the experience itself. So it's beautiful. So anyway, we don't have to really sell it. That's so wonderful. So anyway, are we good? So everything is good? Any questions about it? It's fantastic, isn't it? I love it. It's really wonderful. So where are we? Any place that we are? Where were we in the last time? Do you remember more or less where we were in the last exposition we were maybe in infinite regeneration, right? We were in infinite regeneration. And I don't know if we got to the fountain. I was trying to figure it out today, if we really got to the fountain of life. But let's go back to
I don't think you did there. I don't think you got to it yet.
Okay, so then let's go back into. So I'm gonna go to share the screen twice, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, share the screen here, and I'm gonna share again here. And then, I am not in it. I forgot to ask you.
That's okay. So you're just gonna go up to, yeah, good. Touch that.
That, and unityinmotion.com.
Yep. You got it.
Here we are. Beautiful. And then here we are. And now we go in the Zoom meetings.
You're there. You're in there.
Yeah, well, fantastic. Number 19, the largest of all of them, which maybe eventually will be number 21 the next time, but we don't know. Anyway, all of you will decide in that one. So here we are now. We're going to go to infinite regeneration. Let me see, I passed it. So this one is what I was listening today. Actually, I love all the Zooms that we have done. Really good. I really, I am my biggest fan. Let's put it that way. I'm surprised because in reality, I consider myself kind of dorky as a person, you know, and it's natural because, you know, it's not, that's the reason that it's not that I am humble. It's that as a human being, I'm a little bit kind of dorky. As a divine being, I'm completely here. And, you know, but there is a gap between my divinity and my human that I'm erasing constantly. But the darkness appears sometimes here and there, but it's all, I love it, all of it. And I am enjoying it. I'm enjoying my darkness as being part of my humanity. And I love it. But it's dysfunctional a little bit, you know, but it's okay. It will become better as it goes along. So anyway, here we are. Oh, I am in infinite regeneration. No, yeah, I'm sorry. So we are more or less, let's see, we are in the geometry of balance, right? More or less. What happened if
I think you went down.
Passing? Yeah.
If you keep on going.
Okay.
Actually, that's isn't
Here
that?
we are.
Yeah, we are in the, I think that we are in the geometry of balance. I remember that we talked a little about the fountain of life.
You
But I
started.
said to you that the geometry of balance represents 3 dimensions and is made up of form, which is the mother of all form. It made us of the movements, which is the perfect proportions of the golden mean within Leonardo Pisano, and made up of space. So those are the 3 formations in which 3 dimensions exist. But inside of the geometry of balance, it is movement, form, and a space. And that is where the entire forms of unity and motion exist inside of this geometrical form. And we call it the geometry of balance at the beginning, but also we call it the geometry of light, because as we understand, the actual movement of light is the reflection of light upon the movement of light. And I said to you before, I think that I remember that this formation of the geometry of balance, it can be seen from any place and it will always look the same. It's 2-dimensional, of course. It's a 2-dimensional rendition, just as the tree of life is a 2-dimensional rendition of a 3-dimensional formation that is the sphere of life. So inside of this, inside of here, you will have the front and you will have the back, you will have the diagonals, yeah, the diagonals of the sphere. So the sphere will be made inside of the system. It's a system of consciousness that it is actually the fountain of life. But I told you before that I wanted to really tell you, explain it to you, that you see it from the front. But if you were to see it from the back, it will look exactly the same from the top. If you were to transport your cell in top and you will look there, you will see it the same as you see it from the front. And if you see it from the bottom and you look up, you will see it. From any place that you will see it, it will always look the same. Because it's a 3-dimensional formation that exists. And that's the reason it's really a fountain. It's the first time that we acknowledge the fountain of life. Yeah. So this is wonderful time to explain a little bit about, spend time with it, because just as remember that in the Metatron's cube, inside of the geometry of Metatron's cube, there are the 2 squares, you know, one square here and the other square existing inside of the other one. All the symbols of Metatron cube, all the symbols of the Platonic solid exist inside of that form. It's an spherical formation of form, a space of movement, which is the essential formation of 3 dimensions. Yeah. So then what I explained to you after is that we put the particular vessel in order to be able to assist it to understand through the Eucharist that this vessel is actually the fountain of life, forever giving and receiving itself as love, which is the energy of life. So we are inside of the fountain of life. The fountain of life it came into existence as a reality in our human sense in the moment of the harmonic conversions. So remember that I said to you that in the instant of the harmonic conversions, it was really an instant, a cosmic instant. They united through the alignment of the heavens, the reality of physical existence and the planet Earth, which prior that was kind of confused, but also very exalted because it was preparing the field to merge, but also the reality of the immediate universe that surrounds us, the 7 super universes. So in the moment that everything became aligned, it was like a flash of light, like a thunder light that instantaneously, in one instant, occupied all space, all form, and all movement, and it gave reality to the new consciousness. And the new consciousness became that which it was promised, the fountain of life, a field of energy that is ever existing within the moment of our human life, that is the ultimate panacea for all aspects of consciousness within the human being. It's the panacea of the mind because it clears the mind from all the confusion that we have gotten inside of our genetical memory of the evolutionary consciousness. It's a panacea of the heart because it's the actual energy of life, the feeling of life itself that takes care of all aspects of innocent confusion, pain, sickness, all of it begins to heal it because we are partaking of the natural field of energy that is everything. It's self-contained with the smallest particle within the largest system and within the universe. And it's the ultimate panacea because it is the physical moment within our human life in which the whole world is transforming into a new world, in which all nations are gradually becoming one, all religions become dissolved into the actual presence of God, all philosophies are no longer projections of the mind, but understandings of the consciousness itself. Everything becomes the golden mean of life inside of the fountain of life. So we use the symbol. I did the symbol because one of the aspects of the new consciousness, it was the second coming, but also it was the fulfillment. Remember the fulfillment of Buddha, the fulfillment of Messiah. Messiah became the energy of life itself, the new mind of consciousness. Remember that 2,000 years ago, the Messiah was this big drama because it took the form of Christ, and you know the story about that. So the Messiah now became the actual energetic field in which our mind is transforming inside of wholeness within wholeness, and be able to perceive at whole awareness all aspects of consciousness that correspond to the Garden of Eden, but also correspond to the renewal of the Newtonian physics of consciousness into the actual universal existence. So we are inside of a completely new field that is universal, in which God is actually the present moment of life. So, so remember that even though we use a symbol that may be interpreted inside of the Christian tradition, it houses all traditions because it is in the new consciousness, all the traditions are that. The traditions that brought us to the fulfillment of all things becoming fulfilled within the moment of life. Yeah, so religion it will become the moment of our life. Can you imagine awakening in the moment, which you already feel it? Get up in the morning and you are in church already. You know, you don't have to do anything. You are already in the church. And when you have the tea, you're having, you know, you are inside of the, everything becomes saintly, if you may, but not because it's good. It's just because it's the natural existence of its own self-existent holographic imprint coming into the presence of the moment. So the fountain of life is good for understanding. Remember that we did one of the Zooms. I don't remember which it is. I'm going to find it, in which I explained to you that if you start from the bottom, this was all the different formations in which we, from the amoeba, begin to manifest form, and then we develop into the physical form, and then we'll develop into the light, and the light develop into different aspects of understanding and love and consciousness and experience that brought us into the eternal moment. And then the Trinity brought us into the universal moment, in which we are all becoming one inside of the fountain of life. The fountain of life is a fantastic thing. Also, I told you that the fountain of life is actually one imprint, it's the moment. And if we're, this is what I wanted to tell you, that in the moment of the harmonic conversions, in the moment of the flash of light, it will be the same as having in the garden a specific fountain that has been disconnected because there was no electricity or something happened. And all of a sudden you plug it into the electricity and the fountain starts going. So in that instant, this is a simplistic form, in that instant, the fountain began to exist, which was the unity and motion of all things interrelated as one, manifesting the fulfillment of all physical existence. This is the universe here. The whole thing is the universe. This is the makeup of all things, the universe. This is the light of the world and love. This is the consciousness. And this is what we are unfolding in it. And it's called the fountain because it gets renewed within every single moment. And it's only one moment, because if we were to let me see, animate it, because I wanted to ask somebody if I can animate that, because I would like to show it to you how whatever is here, it changes into itself and it becomes part of everything constantly. So whatever is at the bottom of the fountain right here, it's also in the moment of transcendence, which is actually the moment of ascension. We are ascending every single moment. So everything is ascending inside of the fountain of life. It's not that at lower levels that they are facilitating the higher levels, and there are different stages of consciousness, and so on and on. Everything is inside of unity, and every single point inside of this graphic is a whole manifestation of the fountain. So every, if I were to magnify it to extraordinary degree, there will be a moment in which almost the line that I created to manifest this form, it's not really solid. It's almost like it teeters a little bit, because the moment itself, it is light itself. So each of those particles of ink is actually the fountain. It exists within everything. It is beautiful. What else am I tell you? The fountain, it is actually has the 7 centers, of course, but it has the 10. It has everything. So I will continue with them showing what that is. The fountain, it is constantly renewed at the moment of right here, at the moment of ascension, but it's also renewed simultaneously at the moment of foundation. So the foundation and the ascension are one inside of the fountain. It's continual. It is beautiful, and it's not self-contained, because the universe is expanding into infinity. So the fountain is becoming more and more connected, because it is created with life itself. It's not like objectified that this is what it is. We are inside of a system that is transforming itself as the whole universe, because when the 7 super universes of the harmonic conversions reconnected with the human existence and transmuted the evolutionary consciousness with the evolutionary consciousness that also existed, and the 7 super universes, we reconnected with the grand universe, which means that the universe, for the first time, also became one. And that's the reason that we said we're in the presence of God, because God is all there is, and all there is God. And the presence of God became the natural unfolding, instant by instant, of the fountain of life, the ultimate panacea, blessing us with the natural existence of its own holographic imprint. Yeah, wonderful. Can I continue with it, or should I bring you back? I continue with it. Can I bring you back? Should I come back to you?
Keep on
Any
continue,
questions?
continue with it. That's
Continue
fine.
with it. Okay.
Yeah.
So then, the fountain of life. Oh, I wanted to tell you something that is happening. Okay. In the moment of the fountain of life, when the fountain became manifested and the foundation became simultaneous with the center itself, and it became simultaneous with the center of ascension, in which we all interconnecting as one, ascension. Ascension became the centralization of all things. So the foundation became centralized in the center of the geometry of light, and in the center of the fountain of life, which is here. And I wanted to tell you that the center, in the moment of the harmonic conversions, we are all got interconnected with the center of the planet Earth because of the fountain. And in interconnection with the center of the planet Earth, we were always interconnected to the center of the planet Earth, but we didn't know what that was. So the whole of humanity, inside of it, we are interconnected inside of the planet Earth. And I explained it to you that all this, even though I said to you it's the same figure, these are all humanity. In China in this moment, this is in America, this is in Europe, wherever you are, you're always inside of this sphere. And equilibrium means that the center from which we are merging to, which is the gravitational center of the planet, is the same as the vertical extension of equilibrium from which we are all renewing as the natural movement of life. All humanity is renewing within the moment. This is a fantastic event because now that we are in the new consciousness, our renewal can concord with the renewal instead of our renewal being like something that it happens to us. And the renewal, it may innocently is recreating the same complexities that we were innocently manifesting. The renewal for the first time is cleaning everybody out, everybody being clear. And even though in the moment it's so confusing in the planet right now, a little bit, that it makes it sound like it's almost impossible, but it is not. So we are inside of the universe. Yeah, we are inside. This is what Unity in Motion about. Is we are bowing inside of the unity of our natural self, inside of a universal system of motion that is the same motions that allow us to experience ourselves as life. Remember that if you have to define life as in some way, you have to define it. We can define it as light, we can define it as God, but eventually we have to define it as movement. Yeah, because what we call death in our interpretation as humans is the absence of movement. Yeah, the life have left the body. So what we call life is the motion of all things. So we are alive in the motion of all things, and we are inside of eternity because we are no longer self-contained and confined in our human experience. We are inside of a whole experience that is universe, constantly transmuting as infinite regeneration, as the whole universe expanding into infinity. Yeah. So then returning back into the fountain of life, which is synchronicity. Synchronicity, simultaneity are all words that approximate unity. Synchronicity and simultaneity are words that approximate a conceptual understanding of the experience of that existence. So I say it again, synchronicity, simultaneity, and unity are words that we created in our human unfolding, but they're all approximate a mental imagination and comprehension of the experience itself. Synchronicity is actually an essence, because what happens, okay, I have to go back a little bit. I'll come back to here, I promise to you. I just wanted to tell you that in the moment that we enter the fountain of life, right here, the fountain of life, the foundation and the foundation and the actual instant of transmutation, that it is our ascension, became the essence of all things, became one. That's what I'm telling you, that everything is inside of unity, and every single point within the fountain is a fractal version of the fountain. Everything is animated inside of the realms of unity. So in foundation paradise, which means that for the first time, our human experience of centering interconnect us with the actual paradise, which is the center of the universe. We are, for the first time, inside of a system that is constantly recreating itself inside of unity. And there is, therefore, inside of the essence of all things. So every one of the dimensions, every one of the words that we use are really inside of their essence, instead of the inside of their own interpretation. So when I say to you that we are inside of the realms of synchronicity, simultaneity, and unity, but I'm telling you that these are words that we created in time to have a conceptual understanding of that meaning, but it's not the reality itself, because synchronicity is atomic, it's the connection to everything. It's not all together now. Yeah, synchronicity is not all together now. It is the essence of all things participating inside of wholeness. So you can describe it as all together now. Yeah, so synchronicity is an essence because it represents the existence of its own existence. Essence is something that it cannot be changed. It is what it is, just like the love is an essence. And essence means that it is what it is. You can use many words to try to explain it, express it, share it, and it's beautiful because it assists us to get more and more. All the words and all the feelings and all the concept are like the cake, the icing and the cake of this beautiful tasting chocolate cake made of different layers of creams and so forth. But the actual taste of the cake as a whole is synchronicity. What the explosion that creates in your mind. And then you say, oh, I'll taste the chocolate, I'll taste the wine, I'll taste the cream, that's wonderful. But the actual essence is the essence itself. So simultaneity means that everything happens at the same time, all together now, is a conceptual description of something that is an essence because it is simultaneous with life. Simultaneous with life. So these are good things to come to contemplate, because remember that our mind only understands things linearly and sequential, just like the mind understands the sphere as 6 directions of a space. You know, you said a sphere, okay, a circle, what? And then you say, well, a sphere is made up of right and left, front and back, and above and below. You have 6 directions of a space reunited as one. So you said, okay, wonderful. It's a wonderful communication. It's a wonderful explanation. But the explanation is not the sphere. The sphere doesn't have right and left, above and below, and front and back. It is the sphere. It is the point of consciousness of 3 dimensions, the very makeup of our human existence and the very makeup of the universe. Yeah. So simultaneity, even though it's nicely described as all occurring at the same time, that's an explanation. It's not simultaneity, just as synchronicity, all things reunited as one, is a lovely explanation, but it takes many, many, many words to explain something that is every single instant of time, it is inside of reality. Yeah. And then the last one is unity. Unity, we interpret it through our human experience as a realm that encompasses all things as one. Again, it's a lovely explanation. But unity is not that. Unity is the essence of the universe itself. That's the reason it's called the universe. Yeah, and that's the reason that the description of the universe is one. Yeah, after you said the first word, one. So the actual description of unity is actually the reality itself. So this is what the trip is about. That in the planet Earth, inside of the realms of evolution, we're discussing forever the possibility of unity, that the arc of infinity is fast, but eventually turn to burn toward justice, that we will all come together, it will be wonderful, that all nations become eventually one, that we will take care of the whole planet because we are all living on the same planet. But we don't understand that the actual atomic background of our human existence is unity. The actual, and I use the word background again, it's like a word to explain, but the actual existence of us being alive in this moment, me talking to you in front of this computer and telling you all these words, is unity itself. So unity is an essence. It's not an explanation of a principle, but we can use it to understand it, yeah? Because then we can repair the world by saying we live in the realms of unity and all nations will become one. And so we are blobbing inside of a projection, which is rightly so, but unity is the background of that expression. So in the reality itself, everything has been given inside of its essence. And the evolutionary unfolding in the realms of duality, that essence that always has been given is interpreted as long distance from what it is inside of the realms of cause and effect, good and evil, or whatever we want to call it, as something that we are pursuing, but it's a little bit, I will use the word silly, it's a little bit startling now that the new consciousness, because you said, oh my God, everything that I wanted, it always was here. And every time that I wanted, I projected outside of myself, innocently, inside of the realms of duality. Everything that it was being given was always present, but inside of duality, I projected it outside of myself in time as a distance from me. And then now the distance has been taken away, and now everything that has been given, it is present, and we are in the essence of all things. So light, consciousness, unity, presence, balance, beauty, self, whole nature, infinite regeneration, and foundation paradise are essence of consciousness that exists within the whole field of consciousness itself. So we're living in the realms of essence. Everything, that's what it means in the garden mean. Remember that I was telling you that in the Garden of Eden, we were living, we carried the memory that everything was beautiful, everything was perfect. We live in the paradisiacal state, and then we're recreated inside of our mother's womb because everything was given, everything that we needed was always there, and everything, it was perfect. And then when we got in the physical world, wow, you start crying, oh my God, I'm in the physical world. What is this? What I'm making sense of this, and so forth. So in the reality itself, we always living in the realms of ecstasy, and which is the same as the realms of essence. And now we are back in the garden, and we live within the realms of essence. So everything that you have in your house is an essence. The table that you have in your house is an essence. And the lights that you have in your house, everything that you have, every object that it was given to you is an essence. It carries the memory of the person who made it. It was given to love. You bought it because you love it. But now it gets transformed because you understand its placement in the entire voyage of time. Sometimes we forget that I go to the supermarket and I buy a box of matches, and I have these matches that I make my tea in the morning. And I look to the match and I said, oh, fuck, remember that it was a time that we needed to get like this with wood to try to create fire. And now that we have the max of budget, we have the electrical thing in the stove that makes the fire. We have electricity. We have all the things that they were created by ourselves and by reality itself to simplify hopefully that idea, to reach our life so we can be more and more present in the physical world and become present with the essence of all things. When you are in the essence of your things, a match becomes magical because you buy it for a few seconds. Somebody made it. It's made of wood. You can imagine a machine made it, this little thing. You cover it with this thing that then when you scratch it creates fire, which is light itself, from which you can light other things in order to cook the things that you're eating. Everything becomes magical inside of the essence. Yeah. So the essence is actually the 10 dimensions. The essence for us is the 10 dimensions. And I apologize here because this one originally painted pink in order to assist us to understand that this is the dimension that in the moment that the fountain became I don't know what the word will be. It's almost like let's put it that way. If I explain it to you simple, and I will give you a break after a moment. Let's say, for example, that in the Garden of Eden, we will live in no time, but also we will live in time because it was all continual and perfect, not as time as a breaking, but as a continuity. And then all of a sudden we got away from the garden for whatever reason. You can say that God punished you inside of that story and blah, 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 or whatever the story you want to create. And what it happens inside of the Genesis story is that we got transported from the garden in which the tree of life, according to the story, got covered into the good and evil. So when we covered into the good and evil, the actual time in which we were existing in the garden became covered into another time that was the creation of our own consciousness. So we created time in order, with everything. So when we return it and the consciousness became one in the moment of union 30 years ago, that frame that it was the impasse between the garden and the evolutionary consciousness got covered up, got reinstated. So the whole story of millions of years was actually one frame of time. So we reconnected with the original frame that we lost in the moment of going from unity into duality, and we return it to the realms of unity, covering that frame. So that in the covering of that frame, we reconnected with the original fountain. And it was the garden. You can say it was the garden, or you can say is that renewal in the garden in this new light, because even the garden is renewed. Yeah, it's not that we're returning to the old garden. Remember that the new garden is the universe now. Yeah, it's not the imagination of this paradisical place inside of a beautiful place in the Bahamas. Yeah, the garden is actually the whole universe. Yeah, the whole existence of the celestial existence. So we are inside now of the essence of all things inside of the garden, and the 10 dimensions of life is actually the whole understanding of the garden. Yeah, remember that I said the 1, the 3, and the 10. That's what we know. And the 10 dimensions are essences. Yeah, essences. Wonderful. I'm doing fantastic in time. I can't believe it. I have 25 minutes to torture you now. No, I'm coming back with you. I'm saying a lot today, but it's not. You understand everything I said. So now you do understand that the 10 dimensions is not something external outside of the free senses of the self. As a matter of fact, the free senses of our human self are the 10 dimensions, and the 10 dimensions are the free senses of the self. Because the whole voyage from the garden to the new connection to essence is that the conceptual understanding of the brilliant mind that is the universe, and the emotional feeling from which all religions and all traditions and all love were forever. Remember, the love was the voyage of all evolution got fulfilled. And then the physical reality, which is our reconnection with the natural moment of universal life, all came together. So the free senses of the self became our natural reinstatement of self right here. So that's the reason for the first time we are the natural essence of our original imprint of wholeness, as it is now reinstated in the creation of the new world that is not only just human in the planet Earth, but is also partaking of the very reality of the whole universe transforming inside of the celebration that is the glory of God. Big, as big as your mind can comprehend that it is. And it will become larger as you give yourself permission, because your mind is going to tell you, it's going to give you images for you to allow your mind to become as vast as it could be, in order to allow you to have the experience of vastness inside of your own creativity, and to be able to have the experience of vastness as the reality of your love, and to give you the experience of the vastness of the whole nature that surrounds you. Because remember that the whole nature and the planet Earth is the electrical impulse of life itself, allowing us to be healthy, to be present, to be whole, to be beautiful, everything. Health is the natural experience of being alive, ultimately. Health is the natural experience of being alive. Yeah. So, so then it is important to remember that through the understanding of unity in motion and everything that we have done, the fountain of life is actually our physical body, even though we see it here as being a beautiful imagery of form, movement, and space. We humans, as the embodiment of that form, movement, which is life, and space. Remember, the physicists, they tell us that we are made of, I don't know, I think that Lois will know, 80% or 90% of space. I don't remember how much, but a lot. We are made of space. Everything is made of space. So anyway, we are the fountain. The fountain is actually the natural experience of being alive in a three-dimensional world, in which the seven centers of our human body is nothing other than the equilibrated experience of our communion with the sphere of life. We are equilibrated inside of the sphere of life. The sphere of life is the sphere of three dimensions. And you can say that the sphere of life is made up of gravity, which is form, expansion, which is movement, and the center moment of life, which is the actualization of those through two aspects into a third one, which is the infinite space of our essential nature, self, of who we are. Yeah. So when we're talking about space, form, and movement, it's the same as saying gravity, expansion, and the natural movement of life. Yeah. And one, we used to understand the sphere, and the other one, we understand the fountain. Without understanding the sphere, it would be impossible to understand the fountain, because the sphere is the direction, are all the directions of a space from which the fountain is assisting us constantly to experience life in its eternal becoming. Yeah, remember that the fountain itself, as the front and back, right and left and above and front and back, no, excuse me, right and left, front and back, which is right here in front and back, and above and below are simultaneous with the moment of equilibrium. Yes. And then as it gets translated within the fountain, you can say giving and receiving, descending, ascending, transforming, becoming. Those are the three explanations, the six explanations that occur within the natural moment of fulfillment. And it's good to understand that, because we are giving and receiving every single moment, descending, ascending, transforming, becoming. This is the unification of our mind inside of the moment itself. So now I would like to bring you into the fountain of life as it corresponds to unity in motion. So let me see. I think that I would like to do, before I come back here, I would like to give you maybe 2 or 3 minutes I'd like to see you, and then I'll continue with it. It's okay? So I'm going to drink a little bit of water. I'm going to change now. And now I'm going to say, Ellen, I stop
Gonna
sharing.
go up
right?
and stop share, yeah.
Yeah, stop sharing. And then share a screen, right?
No, you're good.
Oh,
We're all back.
we are here. No,
Okay.
we're all back. So anyway, just to take a little break, just a little bit. It's a lot what I'm telling you, a lot information. But you have the video, and you have 1,000 questions that's going to arise within your mind, and then you will ask. And then when your mind asks, when you ask, and your mind maybe tell you right away, maybe you don't even need me, because it will tell you. Whenever you ask question to someone, you're asking question to yourself, but already all the answers are within your mind. But if you ask me, I will tell you. And it's good, because when you ask me and I will tell you, the whole consciousness become more present, because everybody has those questions that you have, or maybe no questions at all. No. Everything, we are the awakening from the dream of time. And the awakening from the dream of time is that we are in another world in which everything is new. And sometimes our mind just said, well, what's going on? But everything, I can assist you in it. I've been preparing for a long time to be able to assist you in this event. And I'm very grateful, because I got to help myself as I prepare myself. And now I feel very confident about it, because eventually it's not so much that you need to know. It's very little things, but it has many correspondences. And the correspondence is the interplay of the mind that then can really assist you to understand many things from many perspectives, because the new consciousness see everything from a whole perspective. And then what it does, that your mind will inform you what will be the best perspective that you can come into correspondence to be able to facilitate communication, to facilitate love, or facilitate your own well-being. So it will assist you every single moment. It's the most beautiful series. The universal series is the most beautiful series, and it's divine. That's the reason we call it the divine. So anyway, any questions about it so far? Are we good? I'm drinking a little bit of water. I'm sorry. It's a lot of information too, but it's not complex. It's just that you must remember that the mind is whole, and it has many facets inside of the realms of unity, that as we understand it assists us to see everything in the simplicity itself, but also in the full depth that expresses a whole understanding of something, a whole communion with something. Yeah, I tell Carolina, it's like the eyes. Sometimes, when we see something, we were talking about the difference between simplicity and complexity or depth. And we were thinking about maybe depth is not a good word, but when we see something, we may see it in the surface. But then if we observe it and pass through, many things will come to our mind. So our brain is beginning to decipher what we see, and they give it a completely different meaning. You will see color, you will see form, you will see meaning, you will see message, you will see information. It's all directed to you. So the mind is constantly informing you as the richness existing within the field of consciousness that you are. We are divine beings. Fantastic. Yeah, it's really wonderful. So any questions, Elena, any questions? A lot of information, but you know all this now, more or less. I have said it many times.
Yeah. I
You already know everything, but eventually I'm going to get you so tired to listen that you will eventually start giving me, let me see, what will be the word? Dissertations about what I'm saying.
Okay.
You will say it instead of me.
Yeah.
And that would be fantastic. Then I said, okay, wonderful. Now, yeah, because it's not that you are me, it's that your mind comprehends the wholeness of yourself. And the wholeness of yourself, we're one. I'm not different. We are not different. But we are also individuals in the sense that we will all be in the moment guided to express something in a different way as it corresponds to the natural expression of ourselves. We will not be memory reproductions of each other. Yeah, always we will be the natural expression of your own perfection. Right? So anyway, the whole purpose is to facilitate the scenario from which you can really have full freedom to your own expression inside of the realms of unity. So you feel that you're not jumping into the dualistic experience and then go back to the realms of unity. Because when that happens, it's okay, but your energy gets a little bit confused because you get tired. You get innocently stressed by going into the realms of unity.
I love the whole idea of that you are the thing that you're, we have the two-dimensional understanding of these words, but these words are the whole. So it's a different kind of comprehension. It's a wholeness within the wholeness that way. So it really assists me to move, when I'm walking or whatever I'm doing, just to be more connected with, I don't know if it's connected, but just to be more understanding the moment.
Beautiful, beautiful, perfect. It's lovely. It's a fantastic world. It's fantastic. Yeah, it's beautiful. So anyway, let me see. We have like maybe 15 minutes. And would you like me to continue a little bit longer, or should you, just to continue? So I'm going to take you into the the geometry of balance and unity in motion. There a little bit, and then we'll continue next time with it too, because it's a lot to say inside of that. So let me just now I'm going to go into
share screen.
Share a screen.
Green button on the bottom.
Share a screen right here, and then share one more time, and then we will be together. I'll take you into this symbol. Okay, let me see. Yeah, into the beautiful symbol of unity in motion. So unity in motion, even though it seems like a sort of a movements that we learn and connections that we learn and paths that we learn, in reality, what we're learning is to connect to the fountain of life. Like I said, that the second name of the unity in motion is the fountain of life. So unity in motion is a definition of the moment of life. But then unity in motion is a definition of the fountain of life. And the definition of the fountain of life is unity in motion. And the definition of unity in motion is the moment of life. So you can go from both sides, from the moment to the moment to the fountain of life, to the from the moment to the unity in motion, to the fountain of life, from the fountain of life to unity in motion into the moment. So you can see that they all mean the same thing, but they have a different kind of essence within. So unity in motion is, we name it movements that we practice. And the movements that we practice is our connection to the fountain of life, in which the form, which is the background of all things, because we are everything, is actually the form of our body. And then the movement is the natural momentum in which life is ascending. Every single moment is ascending. It's like the fountain is like a titillating fountain of light that is constantly changing, constantly transforming, and we constantly learning to connect. And the reason that we practice the fountain is to, and the movements, is to be able to experientially, because we can say that the 10 dimensions are essence, we can say all the worlds and the world about the new consciousness. But the practice of unity in motion allows you to really experience inside of your own physical sense of self, inside of your emotional sense of self, inside of your mental sense of self, what that means. So it's not just an affirmation, but it becomes the whole experience of your natural self that then transport you into the presence of creation, from which you feel the empowerment of being creatively alive inside of a new world. If you are creatively alive inside of the new world, you will never have any possibility of being depressed or having lack of energy or being confused or not knowing what to do with your life or thinking that you don't have love or not understanding what your future is going to be or how you're going to make enough money to live. All the things will disappear because you enter the moment of creation in which everything is facilitated because it is the reflection of the fulfillment of your natural self. Everything that you need comes inside of this creative understanding of the three senses within your being. Your physical engagement with the world, your emotional engagement with the love of all there is, and your conceptual, emotional, conceptual consciousness of the world that interconnects you with everything as a creative experience of your being, every single moment facilitating the new world inside of the new paradigm of consciousness, in which the world is blessed because everything you're going to create is going to be beautiful. It's impossible not to. Everything that you're going to create is going to be unity because you couldn't get out of unity. That would be silly because you will go into pain or confusion in the instant you leave it. And why would you do that after you feel that everything is divine in your being? And instead of consciousness, it's a new world because the consciousness is just beginning to comprehend the totality of the brilliancy of the consciousness that is going to invent fantastic things. It's going to create fantastic things for the well-being of humanity. It's going to repair every aspect of the planet Earth. It's going to cure every single sense of disease that exists within the planet. So every single being can be fulfilled. And then in their fulfillment, the heavens, which is our connection to the universe, will open up in the higher intelligence, and we will be able to understand, experience, and be realities that we don't even can imagine yet, because our imagination are being so innocently self-contained inside of the realms of unity, inside of the realms of duality. Imagination inside of the realms of duality is very simple. Yeah. So this is the formation of we use the form we call the coronal plane. We decided to call the coronal plane the form that the movement describes in a space. So we decided to call it the coronal plane because we needed to find a way that the 6 planes in a space, all the planes in a space, the median plane, the lateral plane, the midline, the diagonals, the horizontals, and the reciprocals are all simultaneously in one moment. Yeah, remember that the seven anatomical planes is the explanation, the linear explanation of the actual experience of 3 dimensions, which is simultaneous with life. So the explanation is an assistant, but it's not the thing itself. Yeah, because the thing itself is actually the experience of 3 dimensions. So in unity in motion, the form that the movement describes in a space shall contain every single frame within the motion, within the form, self-contained within itself, all the planes, all the anatomical planes at once. You're uniting the right and the left. You are in the center, above and below. You are the front and the back. You are the diagonal, the horizontal. The whole matrix, it is existing within the moment itself. And as you practice, you're going to begin to see, oh, I see. The subtlety of understanding the plane in which I'm moving and the connection that I'm moving allow me to be in all the anatomical planes at once. And what that does, it gets actualized as the seventh center. The center of foundation here, the center of the pelvis here, which is the center of physical reality, the center of self, which is the solar plexus, and the natural release of the spine, the center of your heart, which is right here, the right and the left of your heart, the center of the throat, which is the natural release extension of the cervical area, and your natural connection of the word and expression as they correspond to the essence of life, essence. This is the gift that we were given here, that the word, it became real. What you're saying is actually the reality of your human experience. We didn't know in the evolutionary consciousness and the dualistic and comprehension of ourselves, we were told in the story that man does not live from words alone, but for every word that comes out of the word of mouth, of the word of God. But we interpreted that as many, who knows, have thousands of interpretations. The reality is that we are recreating ourselves constantly by the very words that we use. Every single word is not just a word, it's actually the way that our consciousness expresses itself. Yeah, it's the way that our consciousness. So now that's the reason that I'm paying a lot of attention to the words that I'm using, because I want to make sure that in myself, that the words that I'm using are really not words that repeat the innocent projection of dualistic interpretation, because then what it does, it creates jarring in the reality of the mind, and then we are not simultaneous with things. So anyway, this is the throat, the gift of the new consciousness. This is the mind right here, right and left, the mind, which is the third eye, and this is the crown, which is our connection to the Trinity and our connection to natural connection to the moment of infinite becoming, that is ascension. Then the infinite becoming, the 9 dimension right here, yeah, infinite regeneration, yeah, it's actually, because all the dimensions are realized here in crown, are really actually the moment of ascension, yeah, and that's what it is. Every single moment we are ascending, every single moment we are recreating ourselves, yeah. And I wanted to tell you that this form that it goes into itself, that the fountain of life, or the geometry of balance, which is another way of saying, or the natural form existing within coronal plane, is a system of consciousness that the self-regenerated self is a self-regenerated system of consciousness, giving and receiving itself as love. You can say giving and receiving itself as life if you wanted to, whatever you want to, but it is self-regenerated inside of itself. It means that as you learn the connections and as you learn the path, and you become more and more accurate in your relation to a space, the actual outer form of the movement is the same as the revealing of the centers. And the centers is the same as the revealings of the outer form. So you're always, the outer becomes the inner becomes the outer, the descending becomes ascension. Everything becomes interconnected inside of the experience of wholeness of your own interconnection to the sphere of life. The interconnection of the sphere of life, it is the last of the principles of unity in motion. Remember gravitational expansion? So the sphere of life is that you utilize the field of gravity and the field of expansion to unify yourself in three-dimensional space. So the grounding and the ascension are always one in unity in motion. Yeah, and it's not an exercise. The reason the unity in motion is not an exercise, because you don't try to stretch the body, to form it in any form. All that you're doing is to unify it inside of the reflexes, the skeletal reflexes, the muscle formation, the energy itself. You unify in all the systems of function of your being to become simultaneous with yourself and simultaneous with life itself. And it's exquisite in that sense, because you then, as you practice, as you learn the movements, you are constantly partaking of the actual energy of life. And it's very wonderful, because once you know the movements, you can practice or not practice them if you want to. But when if you practice them, you would always renew the natural attunement of your natural self in relation to the physical existence, in relation to the energetic field called life, and in relation to the whole field of consciousness that is the universe. So there are three forms that you are renewing yourself. Yeah. And you can say, well, I just renew myself in the physical existence. And it's wonderful. But then if you renew yourself into the energetic field, you will feel much better, because more healthy, right? The energetic field is fluid and it's wonderful. Everything is functioning simultaneous with life. You're really healthy. And then if you renew yourself inside of the conceptual field of unity, then it's fantastic, because you get to partake also of the universal creation, which is a trip within itself, because it's much larger than the memory that you have about your human experiences. It's different, it's beautiful, it's lovely, because that becomes the natural expression of your cosmic self. And I use the word cosmic, I don't know if that's the right word, imply your natural essential self that is the image and the likeness of God. Yeah, so the image and the likeness of God, you remember as a word, created a lot of confusion at the same time that it was projected in order to give us a clue about what that it meant to be in the presence of God. But in reality, that's an explanation of it. The image and the likeness of God is nothing other than you being synchronized with the movement of life. That's what it means, that you are one with life, and therefore you are one with God. You are one with creation. You're one with every dimension, and it's beautiful. So I wanted to show you a place that, in Unity in Motion, if this will be the fountain, the outer mandala, you get to be here in Mandala Crown, and then Mandala Crown, it gets transformed into the sphere here, into the sphere of Earth. When it becomes right here, you touch the sphere of Earth, right? Right here is the sphere of Earth. You see, right there is the sphere of Earth. Yeah, and then you come back around right here, and then the suspended wave. No, excuse me. You come around here, and then you go inflowing wave, and then you go descending, ascending to foundation, and with descending, ascending to foundation will take you to crown, which will be actually, crown will be mostly here. Crown is here. This is mandala crown. Yeah, crown will be here. Crown meaning the natural extension of your body down, as it also corresponds to up. The celebration of the Trinity here. And then when we enter the mandala, for example, I wanted to show you, you see this energy here going into here, and then here and here, the natural momentum of life. It coalesces itself in this point right here. In this point of coalescing within yourself is called the delicate heart. This is the point of the delicate heart, that the delicate heart becomes transmuted into this other dimension, which is this particular form, this particular other, the going out. The inner becomes the out, right in that point of the delicate heart. And according to the movement that you're going, once you go into infinity's gate, if you go all the way to crown, you get to go into this form in order to facilitate the expansion of all of yourself. So when you get to infinity, of course, you will be in a completely different place, because you will be all the way extended to the spine right here. But this is the connection that will take you to infinity, yeah? And then the connection that is going to take you to expansion will be this connection right here, this point of expansion, right here, the centralization of your heart, which this in the two-dimensional figure is very difficult, but you can get an idea. This is expansion, from which navigation will take you into mandala crown, or if you go into heaven, right here, it will become a round circling heaven, from which it will take you into the sphere of heaven, which is this one right here. The sphere of heaven completed cell right here. This is the sphere that will take you. This is the sphere of earth. And then this is the sphere of the moon right here. That little point here, this is the sphere of moon. And the sphere of moon is when it's take you around the crown, or the sphere of moon, it take you above the crown, which means that you get to have always your heart open, extending from the center of your being to go into wherever you're going in the movement, always to facilitate the opening of the 7 centers. There's a lot to say in this connection, in this map. It's an approximation, but all the connections of unity and motion exist inside of the fountain. Every connection, the 19 connections, they are all connections. They're already inside of the fountain. And then the movements allow to unite all the connections into one fluid, constant connection to the fountain, in which the 7 centers become simultaneous within themselves. So the only difference, and that's the reason unity and motion is not an exercise, because when we exercise, nothing wrong with exercise, but when we exercise, we look from the extreme of the movement, and then we associate the stress of the stream of the movement with the exercise itself. But when we do that, we open one center where we mash the other 6. So we open one and then we mash the other one. Then we open another one and mash the. So the idea was that at the end, they all will explode because you activated the 7. But in reality, the 7 are simultaneously interconnected within the same frame of movement. That is the moment of life. So what you're learning through the movement is to synchronize within your being the 7 centers of life, which is the center of foundation, which is your connection to the planet Earth, right here. The center of the pelvis, which is the right and the left of your pelvis and legs, from which you're sensing how the ground begins to go vertical up. Yeah, that's here. The center of the solar plexus, this is the solar plexus, from which above and below are the descending, ascending nature of life. Above and below are one in the center, actually in the delicate heart, but also in the solar plexus, yeah, above and below, yeah. Then the center of your chest, which is the right and the left energetic field of your arms, constantly opening through the heart, right here, the heart. That in the opening of this center, then the solar plexus, the pelvic and the pelvic floor can remain open, because without the heart opening, you couldn't sense the opening of everything. Yeah, it becomes naturally extended. And then from here, then the center of the throat become, this is where the moon opens, this sphere here, right here, the sphere of moon is what opens the center. Horizon, which is right here, horizon, which is the 3 horizontal planes, the connection of horizon, opens the throat. And suspended diamond right here is what allows the throat to be extended. And the extension of the throat is imperative, because when you release the throat, right here, you're releasing the cervical vertebra, you're releasing the solar plexus, which is the extension of the thoracic vertebra, you're releasing the pelvis, which is the right and the left of your legs, you're releasing the direction of the pelvic floor, from which the center of gravity becomes the same as the center of expansion. So the gravitational descending and ascending are one. When we go to the sphere of heaven, which is right here, of the sphere of infinity, of the connection of central crown, which is in here, in those 3 connections, we are opening all the centers of the head and the crown. But at the same time that we're opening those centers through heaven, infinity, and central crown. Those three centers is what opens the heart, is what opens the solar plexus, what is open the pelvic, and what it opens the pelvic floor, and what it opens the direction from which the planet Earth is also ascending through you within the movement of life. The planet is ascending constantly. Yeah, so it is important to once you begin to read, all that will become part of your experience. It's not going to become complex at all. But I want you to know that all that exists within you. And then if there's any questions about the movement, what am I opening this movement? What am I sensing? I want you to ask me, because once you know the practice disappears inside of yourself. So what you're really doing is nothing other than experience the unity of your own self. And experiencing the unity of self is a beautiful thing, because what it will do constantly, if you practice every day for 10 minutes or 15 minutes, whatever way you can, it will allow the memory of your genetical code that it wants to contract into the realms of gravity to remain open. You want to remain open as much as possible, because that's the health. That's the natural connection to health. And you want to remain open as much as possible, because your mind can not only just partake of the moment by being present, but allows you to experience the larger gift that is your whole field of consciousness. There is nothing more beautiful than the whole field of consciousness, because you have connection to the universe inside of yourself. Yeah. So then, those are all the connections are here. All the movements are inside here. All this is an approximation. But I want you to know that you're always in unity in motion. You're always going from the foundation to the crown and descending from the foundation to from the crown to foundation. No matter where you are, in the floor or seated or standing, every single movement is ascending, descending, descending, ascending. And then when you explore it, the around the crown and about the crown, you're exploring the horizontal plane, which is the centralization of your heart, as it corresponds to around the crown, which is your relation to front and back in relation to right and left, and above the crown, which is front and back in relation to right and left, as it maintains all the different experiences of three-dimensional movement. So eventually, when you get to the practice more and more, you do nothing. In the practice, all you do is to learn the connections of a space, connecting the connections of a space, and just allow your connection to awaken within you whatever it is that you are going to know, understand, and experience. So whatever you need to know about that, always bring it forward. It will be available for you. Oh my God, I'm creating more time right now. So anyway, I just wanted to stop now, but I wanted to, let me see, I wanted to really go into, am I here back? Am I here back? Yeah. I just want to show you something. In this one, this is the last part that we're going to go now in the next Zoom. And then we'll come back a little bit up about too, because you're going to have many questions about. This is about the Emerald Tablet of Hermes. And here is a poem here. That's an ancient symbol. And this is a poem that I want you to study a little bit. Remember, there is it's an ancient story. And it's an ancient story created in time for us to be able to understand it now as being the Magnus Opus. Magnus Opus. Remember, the Magnus Opus means the philosopher's stone, that the particular connection to the fountain of life in which each of us will be able to experience ourselves anew in the new world. So just read it for a little bit and find out what it is. And what it says here, it explained a little bit about the interpretation. It's the Father, if I read it here for you just briefly, the Father of all perfections, and the whole world is here. Its force or power is entire if it be converted into earth. But it means that if you bring it into the planet and you ascend it from the planet, separate though the earth from the fire, you mean the subtle from the gross, I mean just take away any aspect of density within yourself and refine it inside of the energy of your being, as your being sweetly and with great industry. It ascends from earth to the heavens, from earth to crown, And again, it descended to the earth and received the force of all things, superior and inferior. Remember that in that time, superiors and inferiors, that's the reason that it's different now. By this means, you shall have the glory of the whole world. It's different a little bit because the glory of the whole world doesn't mean power. It means that you get to be in the presence of yourself, which is the divine. And thereby all obscurity shall fly from you. So anyway, I want you to read it for a little bit. And then I want you to go to the last part, which is 4 stages of unity and motion. And right here. And then next time, you're going to have questions about it. I'm going to work with it. And I want you to understand that Hermes, just about all the deities that existed within the time sequence, were natural projections of ourselves, assisting us to give us hope, understanding. Let me see, what would be the word? To assist us to be able to catch up with the physical world in which we were living and to eventually come back home. So now that we are back home, the emerald tablets of Hermes, which is the most ancient, one of the most ancient, just like the flower of life, of the tree of life, all the symbols of time became fulfilled. So we are in the presence of the fulfillment of all things. So the actual reading of the poem of the Emerald Tablet of Hermes was translated by many people through time. And the translation that you have here is by Isaac Newton, the famous philosopher and mathematician, because in that time, everybody was trying to read what did it mean, because it was said by Hermes that it will be that which will bring us to the fountain of life. We didn't know what that was. And at that time, we couldn't understand it in that sense, or the sphere of life of 3 dimensions and so forth, because 3 dimensions was a mystery. But what I wanted to tell you is that the famous philosophers, just as the Platonic Solids, and just as the Metatron's Cube, and just as the Tree of Life and the Kabbalah, they were all expressions of our evolutionary consciousness that now we can transpose it into the reality of life itself. So we are celebrating them and their fulfillment, but also we can appreciate them and their projection of beauty. Okay, so just read it. I don't know, we leave it here. I'm sorry, I now went a little bit more further than what I did. I'm going to go on now into share.
Stop your share.
Stop the share, and I'm here with you. I'm sorry that I went over for so long time, but I know that you are enjoy it in some ways, and that you will ask questions about it, and that we'll complete maybe next time. I don't know if we need 1 or 2 times to complete the physical reality, but by the time we complete it, you will have an understanding that it's not just physical reality, but it's the emotional content and the consciousness itself. Yeah, I love you.
Yeah,
thank you for
that
everything.
was really amazing.
You're paying a lot of attention. I'm in awe that you were actually that you'll be able to stay for a long time for all this. But I appreciate you and I love you, and I get to see you soon.
I especially like that drawing because it shows me the pathways. You know, sometimes as I'm practicing and I'm feeling for the pathways, and that visualization really
it's going to help you. It's going to help you. So then when you have questions, I'll guide you in the path. You know, soon I will be able to guide you. Where did you encounter the path? So you don't use the physical sensation, you use the energetic sensation. So the physical sensation become expanded inside of the energy, and then you get to experience more your relation to 3-dimensional space, because it's not a structural only, it's a spatial in this nature and energetic in this nature. Okay, so I'll let you be. Thank you for everything. I love you, and everything is divine, and I'll see you soon. Okay, and actually in 10 days, and questions and answers. Ciao, ciao. I go live now.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Fantastic.